Hello, friends. Yeah, as I deserve for the absolutely no work I've done to put this together. But good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Annika Sari, and I am the administrative coordinator of the creative writing program here at BU. And we are super happy to welcome you to the 37th semi-annual Robert Lowell Memorial Lecture. Tonight we have two wonderful poets with us. We have Major Jackson and Annette Frost. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes. Immediately after the reading, there will be a reception and a book signing right next door in the Castle Room. So you will go out and then take an immediate right in there. And there are also, our friend Nada from Barnes & Noble Books is out there selling books. So if you don't have a copy, you can grab a copy of Major's works there. If you have not been yet to the Favorite Poem Project's website, please check it out for information about the Spring Lowell reading and other upcoming events. You can find that at favoritepoem.org. And now, let me welcome the founder of the Favorite Poem Project and of this reading series, Professor Robert Pinsky.
Thank you, everybody. It's my job to explain this occasion, and I will warn you, I'm liable to get a bit high-minded for just a minute or two. Having these wonderful poets, whom I remember when they were quite young, has made me start thinking about the past. Here's the minute and a half of high-mindedness. Universities took over centuries ago, 400 or 500 years ago, the most essential human work, which is to honor the past and preserve it and revise it and change it. That's what the scientists at a university do. They keep the knowledge going and they keep having new theories and new experiments to improve it. This is not less true of creative writing. It's as true of creative writing as anything. In a way, we epitomize it. And the subtitle of the reading series is In the Spirit of Room 222. That's the room diagonally across the street where my colleagues and I still teach the creative writing courses at Boston University. And Nancy Livingston, who through the Shenson Foundation, my friend Nancy Livingston, who founded this series In the Spirit of Room 22, was thinking of that classroom in which the part-time professor Robert Lowell and his students, Anne Sexton, George Starbuck, and Sylvia Plath, would meet in a creative writing class. And the old joke worth repeating is they used to then go down to Boston Common, where there was once the fancy Hotel Ritz, and they would go to the Ritz and park there and go to the bar. And they always parked where it said loading zone. And the story is that they said, that's okay, we're here to get loaded. We honor the old jokes. The way we try to honor that tradition is that we always have a recent Boston University alum introduce our distinguished speaker. Our distinguished speaker, Major Jackson, I knew very early from his first book, he was very, very good. He was the real thing. In his new and selected Razzle Dazzle, which is bedazzling, he has new poems that take that same gift and open it up to the world in an extremely impressive way. He will be introduced by our alum and the director of the Favorite Poem Project, Annette Frost. I remember Annette as my student, I guess about 9 years ago. Her poems then and now epitomize somebody who's lived on many different continents. When she was here, she was one of the BU MFA students who worked at the Boston Arts Academy, unique local high school. I well remember that was the year that the BU Creative Writing Poets went to the waterfront and we were welcomed by the sculptor Janet Eckelman, who had a wonderful work between the high buildings in the waterfront, a work made out of fabric and kinds of yarn. And the students thanked Janet for that. It was very, very impressive work. We thanked her. Everybody wrote a poem and sent them to her. And I remember the animating spirit of Annette Frost on that occasion. And I remember her poem that opened up the waterfront to the fishermen and to the waterfront's past. And she is still at it. We will now hear, this is the way it's going to work. Annette Frost will give a brief reading and then introduce Major Jackson, and then Major Jackson will give his reading, and we will applaud both of them, and then we'll have a reception, and we will buy books and quell happily. Here's Annette Frost.
Thank you, Robert. It really is a huge honor to be here tonight, and I'm so grateful. I'm going to begin with a couple of poems from a collection I've been working on immigration. Grievable. This morning in Istanbul, my husband watched the Belediye take away our street dog. Someone must have lodged a complaint against his tired, old body. I saw the dog the morning I left, jaw resting on the sidewalk, his eyebrows questions, stiff, patchy fur and cinched limbs. I think he moved to the neighborhood to die. Chose a spot right beneath our living room window, where he lay still except his eyes, and he accepted only water. Our connection was breaking, but there was something in my husband's voice, closing and opening. 2 days ago, I'd left for America with the cats. He sold the couch and stove, and while he waited for a visa, the city took his dog. It is a matter of degree. Deportation, family separation, alienation, these are too big. Like a pink bubble of gum elbowing out the air in your throat. But a dog, one can swallow. It's easy to stand in the doorway with a neighbor shaking your heads. Such a sweet thing. And when the dog cries out as they lift him to the truck like trash, it isn't fair what they're putting him through. Good news. The US government informed Murat he does not have tuberculosis, nor does he appear to be a terrorist. We receive so much good news. He has not murdered a soul, has never robbed a bank or robbed a friend. He does not have a DUI, has never been arrested, and he can list the addresses of his last 15 years of residences. He has never been homeless or in hiding or plagiarized his identity with forged papers or molested children. There is so much to celebrate over dinner with a glass of wine as the accolades roll in. This wonderful, uplifting process, which may eventually amount to finding that my husband, so ungrotesque, so absolutely inoffensive, might be permitted in. And I'll naturally move on to a couple of parenthood poems. Baby Tooth. I delight when your tooth breaks the gum. Erupt, they say. Bone white head cutting the perfect pink. How ordinary you are. How exquisite to develop on time. Look at you, milestones like the charms of a bracelet clinking their neighbors, cheering you. Grow, I whisper when you wake. Grow, I kiss you as you go back down. My own skin puckers, turns inward, creases where I smile, where I flinch my concern. I know I am handing you each day out of my body. Feel myself age and diminish. Only my heart swells and grows young and younger still. And I don't think you can really talk about parenthood these days without talking about climate change. So, the rain. The rain, unstopping, flings itself to the ground already covered in rain. 1,000 temporary divots dip, spring, and disappear on the dark road. All summer, we are wet, limp, trying to stand tall on spongy ground. The slugs tongue our split tomatoes. We cut what we can salvage for summer salads. All this, and we are the lucky ones. We balk from our suburban yards as the mower chokes again on the wet grass that never dries. Tell our children, you used to have to water the garden. The hose hanging purposeless on the house is just a game to them, something to imitate what the sky already does. I'll read two more, and this next one is a bit of a work in progress, a pandemic poem, trying to get at what it was like to teach a class here that let out at dusk, and watching the transformation of the students from daytime to nighttime, and sort of watching these young people try to sort out what it was like for them when their inside lives were sort of turned outside, because that's where they got to be with each other. And I promise I won't do more of that, explaining what every poem is about. The masks come off at night. Students flock, bite as if their faces tasted unlike any taste or nakedness could disinfect the dark. The river passing freely by. Flesh is bare. Bodies pile high against the air, spread with an urgency they hadn't known. What is the night? The masks, fear of touching and of being touched. Sick with want, the unmasked students heave and trample under a heavy sky. Those naked mouths inhale, drink one another's faces. Uncover and discover all the unknown, unseen faces caught in the descent from day to night. That gentle river floating by. The soiled masks come down, drop to the ground, trampled in the naked night. Mask strings hang like shoestrings, limp and hanging off the young. The dark infects them, shows them how they want to feel at night. Cheek pressed to another cheek. Roaming eyes find streetlit faces, lips and teeth and ears pressed against new faces, pulse. A glowing river, bodies thronging in the dark, masks cast to the mask-strewn curb, crumpled underfoot and gone beneath the students' wild flight. Faces gulping, lonely faces in the dark. We must live. The river there beside them, witness in the contagious night. And I'll read one last poem, also from that collection of immigration poems. Sorry, Murat. The work. Day rolls in like a maniac. Another American day, a Labor Day. I see what the country is doing to you. Watch them pull you into the work. Force the soft muscle of your body. Push further, faster, flatten what was once a whole man of you. Down the conveyor belt you go, shaven, uniformed, clipped, work, work, melt through the night doorway, eat whatever I've put there, drift already to sleep, to dream, already of tomorrow, of the work. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you again to Robert for inviting me to read tonight. I am so honored to be sharing a stage with the poet Major Jackson, and I won't go into a long speech about Major's many, many accomplishments. I will just say a few key things. Host of the Slow Down podcast, Major is the author of 6 collections of poetry, as well as a recent collection of prose. His first book won the Cave Canem Poetry Prize, and he's the recipient of the Pushcart Prize. Major teaches some very lucky students at Vanderbilt University, where he is the director of creative writing. Reading Major's work this summer and year has been a gift and an inspiration. In his early books, his poems are fiercely and vividly local and always led by music. They bring you all the way into one specific place, whether that be Steve's 1985 Corvette or the dead-end alley near 5th, and they hold you there in their crispness, whether you like it or not. But even in the most daunting of places, the poems have this hand that just sort of reaches out of them and just touches on the rest of the world. And later in his work, the geography evolves. Kenya, Greece, crisscrossing America, and that reach, that touch, it gets even bigger. When his newest book, Razzle Dazzle, came out last month, I got very excited to see the magnitude of the new poems. I said to a friend, these poems have erupted out of any specificity they once had, and they've reached a kind of greatness. The I and the we of the poems have melted down any barrier between the I of the reader. In his newest work, Major keeps all the magic and melody of his early poems, but the landscape has become the all-encompassing everything and everywhere. And to prove my point, let me just leave you with one short excerpt from his newest collection. All suffering goes this way. We are poor devils made wise by the heft of our wrecks. Some days I scatter a fistful of stars out of words. Please join me in welcoming Major Jackson.
So, good evening. I have this rule among my undergraduates that if I can recite more poems in a semester than they can recite, the highest grade they can get is a C+. So, the race is on at the beginning of the semester. This is a poem that I would often recite on the very first day to let them know I was serious. Skunk Hour by Robert Lowell. Nautilus Island's hermit heiress still lives through winter in her Spartan cottage. Her sheep graze above the sea. Her son's a bishop. Her farmer is first selectman in our village. She's in her dotage, thirsting for the hierarchic privacy of Queen Victoria's century. She buys up all the eyesores facing her shore and lets them fall. The season's ill. We've lost our summer millionaire who seemed to leap from an LL Bean catalog. His 9-knot yawl was auctioned off to lobster men. A red fox stain covers Blue Hill. I have Lowell's voice in my head, so I'm going to say it like, and now, our fairy decorator brightens his shop for fall. His fish nets filled with orange cork, orange, his cobbler's bench and all. There's no money in his work, he'd rather marry. Thirsting for the, I already said that part, didn't I? One dark night, my tutor Ford climbed the hill skull. I watched for love cars, lights turned down, they lay together, hull to hull, where the graveyard shelves on the town. My mind's not right. A car radio bleats, love, oh careless love. I hear my ill spirit sob in each blood cell as if my hand were throbbing at my throat. Hold it. No. I got it. I myself am here. Nobody's here. Only skunks that search in the moonlight for a bite to eat. They march on their souls up Main Street, white stripes, moonstruck eyes under the chalk dry and spar spire of the Trinitarian Church. I stand on top of our back step and breathe the rich air. A mother skunk with her column of kittens swills the garbage pail. She jabs her wedge head in a cup of, do you remember it? Sour cream, and will not scare. So I start there to say, I was never a student here at Boston University, but this is one of the great epicenters of literature and most definitely of poetry. The faculty, the students, many of them I could name, became either mentors on the page, mentors in real life, or very dear, good friends who, like myself, felt as if there was nothing else we were born to do but to read, discuss, propagate, proselytize the love of literature, the love of art. So on that note, I want to publicly thank several of those folks in the room, most definitely Robert Penske, who has modeled for me a service as well as an artistry that has, when I contemplate it, has set the bar for me for many years. And Gail Mazer, who taught in this program, and I think still teaches in this program occasionally, who also modeled for me a dedication. And it's something that we don't talk about because it's something that you can easily get embarrassed about, something that you're passionate about. But when you come across other folks who share that particular passion, it becomes almost a release of sorts. And anyone who has the unfortunate to be in the same room and they don't share that passion can feel a little self-conscious. But this is a democratic art. It's an art that is very welcoming, an art that values every voice, every experience. And so I'm very, very honored to be part of this, the Robert Lowell Memorial Lecture. I was tempted to name all the people, but it would truly, truly be a long evening for me to geek out on those particular poets. So, the great thing about publishing a new and selected is that you don't have to carry around all your previous books. You can just bring one book with you and then coast over your career. The downside of publishing new and selected is revisiting your work and realizing how bad you were. You know, you have to do this kind of 21st century test to poems that were written, some of them 25 years ago. This is the title poem. It's called Let Me Begin Again. And as I said to some of the students earlier, I was trained to be a businessman. I graduated for a degree in accounting. But the courses that I loved were obviously in the English department. So I'm always trying to write a poem that explains that journey. And in this book is the first poem that also explains a kind of a renewal, a rededication, almost like creating new vows to myself as a poet. Let me begin again. Let me begin again. As a quiet thought in the shape of a shell, slowly examined by a brown child on a beach at dawn. Let me begin this time knowing the drumming in my dreams is me inheriting the earth, is morning lighting up the rivers. Let me burn my vanities, old music in the pines, snifters of scotch, a day moon like a signature of night. This time, let me circle the island of my fears only once, then live like a raging waterfall and grow a magnificent mustache. Let me not ever be the birdcage or the serrated blade or the empty season. Dear glacier, dear sea of stars, dear leopards disintegrating at the outer limits of our greed. Soon we will encounter you only in motivational tweets. Reader, I should have married you sooner. This time, let me not sleep like the prophet who believes he's seen infinity. Let me run at breakneck speeds towards sceneries of doubt. I have no more dress rehearsals to attend. Look closer. I am licking my lips. Making things. There's a image of a gentleman in this poem, and it happens to be, I watched the documentary, and it was the writer James Baldwin, but I don't mention him. But it's a wonderful documentary, black and white, where they do that 1960s documentary thing where someone's walking and suddenly the camera zooms in on them from afar. Making things. Suddenly, I had to skewer all my prayers and slow roast them in the open air kitchen of my imagination. I had to shovel fire into my laughter and keep my eyes from blinking. I had to fuss like a cook, simmering storms. I had to move like a ballet dancer, but without the vanity and self-consciousness of tradition. I had to blur my scars so I could write into time and carry the sensation of walking like a morose and heavy American in a yellow ascot over Pont Saint-Michel. I want to be all razzle-dazzle before the dark-cloaked one arrives for a last game of chess. My font of feelings is a waterfall, and I live as if no toupees exist on earth, or masks that silence the oppressed, or anything that does not applaud the sycamore's tribute to the red flame like the heat beneath my grandmother's heart, who never raised a ghost, but a storm. So look at me standing on the porch, laughing at the creek, threatening to become a raging river. So I was just sitting here while I was reading, thinking. I was thinking about how to describe these poems to you. And if you've seen that movie, at least the new poems, if you've seen that movie Run, Lola, Run, that is kind of the aesthetic of these poems, that they're speeding through. There's a velocity. But I trust that the sequence of associations at some point, something will stick out. I'm a firm believer in Keats's notion of living in doubts and uncertainties. Like, not all the poems were meant to be digestible in one taking. The ocean you answer to. This was written during the pandemic, for sure. And there was if you can think about that as a backdrop, but not in that way that I want to call up what we went through, but what we felt at the time. The letter had not been sung, the fire not yet delivered, the traffic light caressed your thoughts and waited patiently. Sunlight sizzled with onions and 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and a dark skillet yearned for its splash of garlic. All was still, unseen. Many marveled in the comfort of their tiny utopias, but you stood like music with your breath outstretched, waiting for eternity to enter your arms. Some thought this is the moment before the undertow of our lives. Only a few considered the artist on her way to her first brushstroke, or the prayer that would last like a comet, or the smile that reached the hand on a beloved's hip. Sunlight like golden leaves close to falling, but put you in the mind of Christos and Jean-Claude and the trailing swath of saffron rivering above your head. The ocean you answer to possesses a hint of infinity, like a neckline, like cross currents in June. Only the withered and lonely did not feel the fire. Language of the moon. As a child, I wanted as many letters in my bloodstream as the planet Mercury would allow. And so traveled the city on buses, late afternoons, and read all the billboards high above the streets and byways, on sides of factories and churches, and never heard the sermons of the displaced or blustery talk of founding fathers, and saddened when a route snaked through long tunnels and then eased when reemerged out of the murder of light. I could feel my veins thicken like the winnings of a Powerball. And the mystery of women lounging around a gray-bearded man in a silk smoking jacket, drinking a tumbler of cognac, was like the easeful glide of a narcotic dream. My mouth puckered whenever lemon-colored arches appeared 5 stories above the city like golden gates to an unforeseen heaven. As a rule, I never glanced at other commuters or curators in lucent ties and tuxedos who clutch brown paper bottles and nodded to a stillness as though murdered in a film. Instead, I glimpsed myself looking out a window, awed by Cartier timepieces and luxury cars that asked, was I hungry for speed? Or ordered me to let my body drive. I ate advertisements like sea waves eating a coastline. And though my sense of self was as bruised as a moldy peach, I learned to infrared my longings from the inside and to tally my suspicions from a distance. And now, when I read a newspaper, I flutter like a sparrow at a bird feeder. And when language spills out of my skull like a massive cruise ship docked and towering over a line of ramshackle huts on an island whose blessed poor gaze up as though a locker full of dollars fell at their feet, my brain closes and my veins burst as if pollinating the white face of the moon. It must be the supermarket in me. An extended conceit. It must be the supermarket in me, all lit from inside, full of wide owls and thoughtful shelf stockings, where you'll find my feelings and memories. That's why on the outside I look so ordered and put together. My inner supermarket contains an old world butcher shop with no trace of the slaughter. Shoppers arrive with an unfathomable hunger, which I relieve by offering freshness, quality, and value. Some are penniless and can only fantasize, licking their lips at rows of artisanal cheeses and meats behind glass display cases, the cloth-bound cheddars and goat at ropes of cured salami and prosciutto. Still, they taste. I offer free samples at stations throughout my supermarket so people will come to know and like me. In the produce department, many test my pears and avocados for ripeness. In the floral area, they sniff. Some walk off with my bouquets. I contain cheerful baggers who will escort you to your car. At times, truthfully, I dislike this about myself. Forever accommodating. I've not always had a supermarket in me. It began when the church in me lost its congregation. And when I lost my mother's love to cocktails and other stimulants. There is no place for anger in my supermarket. I keep it in the back room with a sign that says, "No trespassing, employees only." It's a way of being in the world, a self full of checkout lines and refrigerators until someone runs through me, knocking down my pyramids of canned goods or panic shopping, leaving empty aisles. Thank you for excerpting this poem. Poem with borrowed image from Marc Chagall. Marc Chagall, I just love Marc Chagall. You have these beautiful people, like new wedding couples, floating in the sky sideways. Most days I am full of spacious meadows, golden fields of yarrow and lupine undulating in a veil among free anarchists. Most days I hold it together like the hairpins in my mother's head. Then other days it is as though I am floating sideways in a sour aquarium. Most days I have the faith of coffin makers. Most days I sit side saddle and blow fire. Then other days it is though I am in a line of ants, disappearing into a half-eaten peach. Some days I am a scholar of tiny differences and visit museums where I am a hostage to the visionaries whose indelible dreams arrive like ecstatic breezes, especially on the fourth floor, where I stair-step my way to the gilded halls and peer deep into the still lives of fruit and water pitchers and pheasants, which remind me, I'm told, of my mortality, except I would have included dishcloths and detergent next to a carcass of a rotisserie chicken. All suffering goes this way. We are poor devils made wise by the heft of our wrecks. Some days I scatter fistfuls of stars out of words. Anaculathon. What if the wasteland is in us after all? Our spreadsheets casting shadows that amount to a defamation of the woodchuck. What if we held an Olympics based on altruism, where the clearest conscience of greed wins? What if all the painted nudes suddenly vanished from their frames in all the museums throughout the world? What if the Holothurian was the most convincing aftermath of alien invasion? What if essays were required in order to obtain a driving license? What if a volume of poems were required in order to run for the presidency? What if, when we died, all of our secrets were handed as a printout to our grieving families? What if our ego was an expression of an inverse correlation to our sense of justice? What if instead of food, we ate musical notes and plot arcs? What if our tears were collected over a lifetime, then frozen and served in sympathy cocktails? What if Heraclitus's river is made of recycled water? What if the Lord our God decided to bring back the practice of smiting, as in immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not the people glory, and thus he was eaten of worms? It's a weird poem. I know. Run with me. Run with me. Being a parent is one of the great undertakings in life, one of immensely great pleasures, immensely rewarding, but also immensely challenging. And when I became a parent, I had not discovered who I was. But children have a way of accelerating that discovery. I thought about that writing this poem. I have 4 children. I won't tell you their ages, but I love them all. One is a stepson. But Anastasia and Langston are my 2 oldest in reverse order. And I was thinking about this moment on Long Beach Island in New Jersey, and the great joy I had in watching them play. That's what's going on in that first poem, Let Me Begin Again, just their absorption in the world, their sense of play, but also realizing you may not be able to protect them from what is inevitable in life. Suffering is definitely part of it. The nature of memory. Once again, I'm trying to fall into the light, twice broken and knife-scarred, recalling my children on Long Beach Island, loose sand and Anastasia's dread, Langston holding a red plastic shovel in one hand and the sword-like tail of a horseshoe crab in another, shorebirds winging above their heads. If there is another world, a poet struggles to describe ocean mists dissipating over a young father, distant and lonely, watching his children's laughter run into the sea, then explode at the edge of the world. What is my life but a constant entering into a dizzying churn of days, ping-ponging like numbered balls in a glass air machine? Then, as now, like all of us, I was brought here through a clumsy series of human foibles, and thus am conditioned to read the underside of storms edging up a coast. Someday, they too will push down far enough and unlearn and learned to unfold the hours and minutes into one long continuous wave. For now, I hope they love themselves loud as that day, light drunk, kicking up sand. I'm going to read 2 poems from the new book, and then I'm going to read 1 poem from the other books so that you can see or sense some sort of arc, if such a thing exists in a constructed, new and selected. So I live in Nashville, and in Nashville, it's a great city, by the way. in Nashville, buildings are going up everywhere. There are parties on trucks with people dancing on them. Sometimes there's a hot tub on that truck. And there's a lot of musicians, no doubt. They do everything. They do your yard, as a side job, but they're real passion. I love being in an artist community. The real passion is music. This is called Nashville Sonnet, deconstructed on a bed of magnolia blossoms. There's one little reference, and it's Giacomo de Latini who gave us the sonnet. Other than that, in this city, no one talks dialectical materialism. From high up, the cranes speak an invisible language. The trusses extend over pedal taverns and tractors, joyriding flatbeds of dancing tourists, and it is like reading God's lips. On guard, she says. Today, I am landscaping, staking light across my wintergreen yard to get the worm's perspective, to beg his forgiveness. I'm reaching fingers into darkest soil, pondering the afterlife. A house wren flouts its surefire code to all this achy, breaky singing. Such intricate phrasing like a compass behind Giacomo da Latini's feathered quill pen. I live in a city of acoustic martyrs addicted to heartbreak. Plus this, even the magnolias, vulnerable each spring, court a delicious despair and gift their cream-colored blossoms like spark plugs for the living. Ode to everything. Somehow, I have never thought to thank the ice cream cone for building a paradise in my mouth. And can you believe I have never thought to thank the purple trout lily for demonstrating its six-petaled dive, or the yellow circle in a traffic light for illustrating patience? My bad. In my life, I have failed to praise the postman whose loyalty is epic, the laundress who treasures my skinny jeans and other garments, and the auto repairman who clings a wrench inside my car, tightening her own music. Were my name called, and I were summoned on a brightly lit stage to accept a little statuette after staring in utter disbelief, I would thank my dentist, as well as my neighbor, who sits vigil by the dying, far away from the lights, and my fourth grade teacher, who brought down 3 tape rulers on my hands as punishment for daydreaming out a window during an exam I already completed. Mea culpa. Now that I know the value of the peaks across from Flanders Hill, I will forever express reverence for their green crowns. I will never fail again to say small devotions for the scar on a friend's face that lengthens when I walk into a room. Okay. Very quickly, the best of. This is called Indian Song, which is a song by the jazz musician. It was written, actually, after many listenings to this. On this road trip, I had this cassette player. So you might need to Google that if you're in a certain age. I had a cassette player, and I had this album playing of Wayne Shorter. It's called Indian Song. And I wrote it on a road trip to Oregon to go to graduate school. I wrote it right when I was pulled over a cop because I was getting tired of drive in Kansas. I was trying to get out, and I got pulled over, so I wrote this poem, or started it. And this is from the first book, Indian Song, after Wayne Shorter. Freddie Hubbard's playing the cassette deck, 40 miles outside Hayes. And I've looked at this Kansas sunset for 3 hours now, bristling as big rigs bounce and grumble along I-70. At this speed, cornfields come in splotches, murky yellows and greens abutting the road shoulder, the flat wealth of the nation whirring by. It's a kind of ornamentation I've gotten used to, as in a dream, espiered against the skies blazing, cloud luffs cascade lace like darkening whole fields. 30,000 feet above, someone is buttering a muffin. Someone stares at a sky phone. And momentarily, a baby cries in pressurized air. Through double-pane squares, someone squints. Fields cross-hatched by asphalt strips. It is said Cezanne looked at a landscape so long he felt as if his eyes were bleeding. No matter that, I'm heading west. By my side, you fingering fields of light, sunflowers over earth, miles traveled, a patchwork of goodbyes. This is from the second book. It was, actually, that's not true. That was from the third book. From the second book, we'll skip that one. From the third book, a poem called Picket Monsters. And I've taught at universities, I've attended college, 2 of them, and I love to see the demonstrators. It says to me, democracy is alive. We still have the fighting spirit. Go for it. Picket monsters. For I was born too in the stunted winter of history. For I too desired the lion's mouth split. In the world that is not ours. And the wounded children set free to their turnstiles of wonder. I too have blinked speechless at the valleys of corpses. Wished Scriabin's black mass in the executioner's ear, Ellington in the interrogation room. I now seek gardens where bodies have their will, where the self is a compass point given to the lost. Let me call your name. The ground here is soft and broken. Why I write poetry. Because my son is as old as the stars. Because I have no blessings. Because I hold tangerines like orange tennis balls. Because I sit alone and welcome morning across the unshaved jaws of my lawn. Because the houses on my street sleep like turtles. Because the proper weight of beauty was her eyes last night beneath my eyes. Because the red goblet from which I drank made even water a Faustian toast. Because radishes should be banned, little pellets that they are. Because someone says it's late and begins to rise from a chair. Because life is ordinary unless you plan and set in motion a war. Because I have not thanked enough. Because my lips moisten whenever I hear Mingus's goodbye pork pie hat. Because I've said the word dumb fuck too many times in my life. Because I plant winter vegetables in July. Because I could say the morning died like candle wax and no one would question its truth. Because I relish being sent into the coat rooms in 3rd grade where alone I would turn off the lights and run my hands over my classmates' coats as if playing tag with their bodies. Because once I shoplifted a pair of Hawaiian shorts at the Gallery Mall and was caught. Because soup reminds me of the warmth of my grandmother and old aunts, because the long coast of my dreams is filled with poems and saxophones, because someone somewhere is buying a Rolex or a Piaget. Because I wish I could speak 3 different languages but have to settle for the language of business and commerce, because I used to wear paisley shirts and herringbone sports jackets because I better get it in my soul. Because my grandfather loved clean syntax, cologne, Stacey Adams shoes, Irish tweed caps, and women, but not necessarily in that order. Because I think the elderly are sexy and the young are naive and brutish. Because a vision of trees only comes to wise women and men who can fix old watches. Because I write with a pen whose supply of ink comes from the sea. Because gardens are fun to visit in the evenings when everyone has put away their coats and swords. Because I still do not eat corporate French fries or rhubarb jam. Because punctuation is my jury and the moon is my judge. Because parataxes is just another way of making ends meet. Because I've been on a steady diet of words since the age of 3. My last poem, thank you for your attention, and thank you, dear friends in the audience, old comrades, beloved poets, new poets, people who don't know they're going to be poets later in life once they go into some industry. This is double major. Finally, I emerge whenever he confuses the lamp for a moon. It is then he thinks of fine bindings and ordered athenaeums. I own his face, but he washes and spends too little time behind his ears. He sees me in the mirror behind thick clouds of shaving cream and suddenly believes in ghosts. His other selves are murals in the caves of his mind. They are speechless, yet large. They steer his wishes like summer rain and amplify his terrors like newscasters. What he doesn't know, his dreams are his father's dreams, which are his grandfather's dreams, and so on. They possessed a single wish. He knocks repeatedly on the bolted door to his imagination. Tragically, he believes he can mend his wounds with his poetry, and thus I am his most loyal critic. He trots me out like a police dog. He calls out thirst for pads and pencils, destiny. Our voices come together like 2 wings of a butterfly. On occasion, he closes his eyes and sees me. I am negative capability. The test to all men are created equal. We are likely to dance at weddings against my will. He pulled out the same moves writing this poem, a smooth shimmy and a hop. This page is a kind of looking glass, making strange whatever stone carvings he installed on the narrow road to his interior. I suffer in silence, wedded to his convictions. He would like to tell you the truth about love, but we are going to bed. To bed. Thank you.
Thank you all again for coming. Major's books are for sale. There's food. Come out and join us. The The reception is about 10 feet away down the hallway. Follow me.